3 weeks ago, a luxury hotel on Palm Jumeirah was charging over $600 a night and still couldn't keep rooms available. Waiting lists stretched for weeks as Dubai entered peak season, that rare window when the entire world seems to arrive at the same time. And then, almost overnight, something broke. The exact same hotel is now offering full stay and dine packages for under $100, where the entire price can be spent on food inside the property. Suites that once sold for $272 are now listed for $191, family apartments for $123, and rooms that used to disappear months in advance are suddenly sitting empty. These are not promotional discounts. These are not seasonal adjustments. These are the kinds of prices that only appear when demand collapses at scale. Because right now, in the middle of what should have been the most profitable tourism period of the year, hotel occupancy across Dubai has fallen below 20% in some luxury properties, after operating near full capacity just days earlier. A system built to convert global demand into record-breaking visitor numbers stopped working in a single weekend. And when a city builds its global identity on certainty, stability, and precision, a sudden loss of trust doesn't behave like a normal downturn. It behaves like a fracture. Just days before the collapse, Dubai was on track to welcome 19.5 million visitors in 2026, with hotels operating at some of the highest room rates in the world. The tourism machine was doing exactly what it had spent 3 decades perfecting: converting global fascination into predictable, measurable demand. Every detail optimized, every experience engineered, every risk seemingly contained inside a carefully controlled environment. And that consistency is not accidental. Dubai does not sell beaches better than the Maldives or history deeper than Rome. It sells certainty, the promise that no matter what happens in the region, your flight arrives on time, your hotel functions flawlessly, and your experience unfolds exactly as expected. A luxury destination built not only on spectacle, but on reliability. Almost like a Swiss bank, but for tourism. Which is precisely why what happened next mattered far more than a simple drop in bookings. On February 28, 2026, Iran launched retaliatory strikes on the United Arab Emirates following coordinated attacks involving the United States and Israel. In purely physical terms, the damage remained limited. Air defense systems intercepted most threats, infrastructure resumed operations within days, and flights restarted by March 7th. But tourism does not operate purely on physical damage. It operates on perception, and perception can shift faster than any recovery timeline. Images began circulating almost immediately. Smoke rising near Palm Jumeirah, fires reported at the Fairmont, debris striking near the Burj Al Arab, evacuations at Terminal 3 of Dubai International Airport. For years, geopolitical instability in the region had existed as distant headlines, separated from the Dubai experience by careful branding and controlled messaging. Suddenly, instability had visuals, and once risk becomes visible, it stops feeling theoretical. Within the first week, preliminary industry data showed occupancy dropping 35 to 60% across multiple hotel segments. Some luxury properties reported levels falling below 20%, with internal projections suggesting single-digit occupancy could follow. Major hospitality groups, including Marriott, Accor, and IHG, acknowledged a sharp contraction in regional bookings, while operators managing hundreds of rooms reported 70 to 75% of reservations canceled within just weeks. This was not a gradual slowdown. This was demand evaporating in real time. The timing made the impact even heavier. Eid al-Fitr, falling on March 19th to 20th, normally triggers one of the strongest travel waves of the year, especially from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Qatar. Hotels, restaurants, and beach clubs typically operate at near full capacity during this period. This time, the surge never came. Bookings disappeared almost overnight, converting what should have been peak demand into empty inventory. Then aviation began to fracture as well. More than 700 flights were canceled by Emirates and Etihad within 2 weeks, leaving around 20,000 passengers stranded. A cruise ship carrying 6,300 passengers remained anchored at Dubai port because outbound flights no longer existed. Entire winter sailings were canceled completely. Zooming out, projected losses for Middle East tourism in 2026 range between 23 to 38 million fewer visitors, translating into $34 to $56 billion in lost spending. One estimate suggested Dubai alone was losing approximately $500 million per day during the period when air travel slowed dramatically. At this scale, the issue is no longer limited to hotels or airlines. It becomes a structural shock hitting one of the most tourism-dependent economies in the world. But numbers alone do not explain why the reaction has been this fast. Because what Dubai truly lost was not occupancy. It lost trust. And trust behaves differently from demand. Once it moves, it does not return on schedule. To understand why the shock traveled this fast, you have to look beneath the headlines. Because the strikes did not create Dubai's vulnerability, they revealed it. Even before February 2026, the foundations of Dubai's tourism model were already under pressure, hidden behind record-breaking visitor numbers and expanding skylines. By early 2026, the city had 818 hotels with more than 152,000 rooms, with roughly 67% concentrated in luxury and upscale segments, and another 12,000 luxury rooms already in development. That level of supply only works when demand grows continuously. And warning signals had already appeared years earlier. In 2024, luxury hotels managed to increase occupancy but saw average daily rates decline, meaning properties were already discounting simply to maintain volume. A pattern that once took 5 years between 2015 to 2019 to unfold is now compressing into weeks. When occupancy suddenly drops to 20%, heavy discounting is no longer a strategy. It becomes survival. Then there is the seasonality constraint that rarely appears in promotional material. Dubai's tourism economy functions at full strength for roughly half the year, primarily from November to April, when temperatures allow outdoor experiences. During summer months, temperatures exceed 40 degrees Celsius, humidity rises sharply, and hotel demand declines significantly. This means a large portion of annual revenue depends on a relatively narrow time window. The strikes did not hit randomly. They hit precisely during the weeks that generate a disproportionate share of annual tourism income, effectively removing the highest value period from the calendar. Losing demand in July would have been painful. Losing demand in peak season is structurally destabilizing. There is also a deeper structural tension embedded in Dubai's global positioning. For decades, the city invested heavily in spectacle. Record-breaking skyscrapers, artificial islands, luxury retail environments, controlled entertainment districts. This strategy successfully differentiated Dubai from traditional destinations, but it also created a dependency on flawless execution. Because when a destination relies primarily on engineered experience rather than deep cultural roots, even a brief disruption can shift traveler preferences toward alternatives that offer continuity regardless of geopolitical uncertainty. And those alternatives are not hypothetical. Greece, Japan, Italy, and Southeast Asia are already operating without the same perception shock, ready to absorb travelers who had already allocated budgets and planned itineraries. Demand did not disappear. It moved. And when demand relocates, habits begin to change. Travelers discover new destinations, build new associations, and sometimes never return to the original plan. This creates a recovery challenge fundamentally different from global disruptions like the pandemic. During COVID, every destination faced the same constraints, so competitive positioning remained relatively stable. In this case, recovery happens unevenly. Dubai must rebuild confidence while competing destinations continue operating normally, capturing redirected demand in real time. History suggests perception shocks often take years to fully reverse, not because infrastructure requires rebuilding, but because mental models do. A traveler who hesitates once may hesitate again. A family that chooses an alternative destination may discover new preferences. And gradually, what began as a temporary shift can evolve into a structural reallocation of global tourism flows. This is why the current situation cannot be understood purely as a short-term dip in bookings. What we are witnessing is the gap between a promise and a perception. Dubai promised certainty in an uncertain region, And for decades, it delivered with remarkable consistency. But when certainty becomes the product itself, even a brief disruption creates a disproportionate reaction. Because a brand built on luxury can survive discounts. A brand built on novelty can survive imitation, but a brand built on safety has only one tolerance threshold. Once travelers begin to question that assumption, recovery becomes a psychological process, not an operational one. Hotels can reopen immediately. Flights can resume within days. But confidence does not follow the same timeline. So the real question is no longer whether Dubai will recover. The city has overcome shocks before and continues to invest heavily in infrastructure, tourism, and global positioning. The deeper question is how long it takes for millions of individual decisions to align again in the same direction. Because behind every empty room is not just a missing booking, but a changed calculation happening quietly inside someone's mind. And that creates a broader implication that extends far beyond one destination. In an era where global perception travels faster than physical recovery, cities are no longer competing only on price, architecture, or amenities. They are competing on trust resilience, the ability to maintain confidence even when uncertainty becomes visible. Dubai built one of the most efficient tourism machines in modern history, but the events of early 2026 reveal something deeper about any system optimized for perfection. The more a model depends on certainty, the more sensitive it becomes to doubt. Which leaves one final question, not just about Dubai, but about the future of global travel itself. When perception shifts this quickly, what does stability really mean anymore?